I'm an architect, a social ecological architect, a researcher, an activist, a teacher and a practitioner. And I also have a professorship for art and architecture in the Academy of Fine Arts, Vienna. What's very important is how you bring things together, because of course in architecture, as in anything, it's very easy to say what the plane is, what the wall is. You know, even when you go into calculations about U-values and how a building behaves, because there's the difference between the calculation and how the lived building actually behaves. And so I'm very interested in how things come together. So how do you bring things together and how do they then work when they come together? Because that's where all the calculations completely have to be thrown away. So, you know, I think it's extremely important when you make things to calculate things, but also to test them afterwards to see what actually is how something behaves. I mean, we'll be going later to my house, and it's a house that was built with only one layer. And if you calculate how the building works from its walls, it should not function in a sustainable way at all, but it works because of how we put it together and where it is. Here we are at my house. So if you look here, you can see each brick that was made to go into the building. So it's a one-layer house with only one layer of Poroton is the name of the bricks. What is simply painted onto the facade is a very light schlam, so that when you look really closely, you can see each brick and how each brick is laid upon the other. And the bricks on the ground are the bricks from the sheds that were on the site. So we reused them and put them in the floor. Sometime before 2015, I became part of a women's network. I think it's really fantastic. I hadn't been part of a women's network before, and it's kind of an interesting thing because, of course, old boys networks have been around for a very long time, but women don't tend to make networks. I mean, they do book clubs and stuff like that, but a network of just how that you get together in order to act. And one point, of course, where we all got together and was in 2015 in the so-called crisis when a lot of Syrian refugees arrived in Berlin and were seeking refuge. And we all kind of got together to say, all right, what can we do? How can we be really effective, really fast? What was really, really heartbreaking was the way people were housed in these big sport halls without dignity. No privacy, therefore no dignity, the idea, and no refuge, because refuge also has an idea of calm and quiet and space for other people, a place to move away from other people. And we started very, very quickly, that was the great thing about being a network, to develop a foldable room that could be put up within an hour and also could give people a certain amount of dignity where they can go into a room and be away from other people and also acoustically find some privacy. And so we came to this material, which is a really wonderful cardboard that has the enormous, amazing ability to resist fire. And we started making this project with these modules, and we arrived at our own 14 walls. So the project is called 14 walls. So you can put these 14 pieces that are about 65 centimeters wide by 2 meters high, and you can fold, and it's all about folding things to make things when you fold something, that you make it strong. So it's corrugated cardboard, which generally can only be folded in one direction because of its nature. And we developed new tools and new ways of working with it so that we can actually fold it in many directions. And then, of course, the really important thing about making architecture is that when it's not needed, it just goes into the paper rubbish container. So it's not another piece of thing that someone thought of and then doesn't know how to get rid of. A really important thing, of course, for renovation, but also for newly building, is that we not only make space for ourselves, but we provide space for other forms of life. Because, of course, if we want to look at it in a self-interested way, the more we can help our environment to survive, the longer we can survive within that environment. We added this facade of flamed larch, and what it does is that the charcoal surface takes the carbon from the environment, but more importantly, the spaces behind it and between it offer spaces to many different forms of non-human life. When I was a young architect, there were still famous architects and artists saying that women couldn't be good artists or women couldn't be good architects, whose names I now forget, which is actually very good, because why should I remember their names? And we know all around us, all of these authoritarian patriarchal figures that are now in government and now changing everything again. So that's something that has really shocked and saddened me, that it's not just going in one way, is that it's all bouncing back and you have to keep pushing, bouncing back and keep pushing, and that it can all go in an instant. That's very clear to me. And as I said, that's also something that changed me a lot. For example, entering this women's network, I really appreciate and really value people who support each other rather than pulling each other down. So this then is what we now call Hayala land. It was left for nothing, and it was going to be turned into a concrete covered playground. It's still a playground, but it's biodiverse. We tried at some point to get it approved what we wanted to do, and then at one point we were at another meeting in the mayor's office, and just one politician, I will not talk about, but said it into my ear, said, "Just do it, and then afterwards we see what happens." At the moment, what we have are these enormous architecture practices that always end up with this one person at the top, the one so-called genius, and everyone going down, 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 down like that. Is that we find a way for smaller practices to do small things and then come together to do big things, but not like that, but like this, and maybe a little bit, but you know, that there's a much better recognition that architecture is not done by one person, but by many people working together. And you know, it's a good lesson for how to go forward in life is just try it, because it's no use putting up the barriers before you start. You should start and do things and see when the resistance comes, but not always say I can't do it because there will be resistance.